honestly, I'm just gonna be real right now. I feel more on top of the world than I did when I first started making these videos. One, I have foundation that matches my face fully, and I think that's about it. I just feel like I can take over the world now. So, thank you, L'Oreal. It has been a minute since I've been on here, and I apologize for that. But of course, as we know, quarantine just be getting you down sometimes. And it's also been a minute since I've seen a remake of a film that I immediately downloaded the original and watched it within 24 hours. I recently opened up the experience of Suspiria and just... wow. Suspiria is a remake of the 1977 film by the same name that was originally directed by Dario Argento. The original and the remake have the same general plot, but they are vastly different in so many ways. The film about the dance academy that is actually run by a coven of witches becomes far more layered and 1,000 times more chaotic. For this video, I'll be diving into a couple of drastic themes for the remake, the three mothers, and the differences in style between the two films. So, without further ado, let's start with style. For starters, Argento's Suspiria is an hour and 35 minutes long. The remake, directed by another Italian filmmaker, Luca Guadagnino, runs at 2 hours and 33 minutes long. And with all the extra storyline going on, it could have easily run longer than that. Argento as a director was known for a lot of gore on the screen and vibrance in Technicolor cinematography. I loved watching the classic Suspiria. As the color palette popped in color, it was visually stunning. It was almost like watching a dream. And who doesn't love a whole interior covered in velvet? The remake is a muted color palette and is visually cold and distant. What I find really interesting is that although the original color palette is so vibrant and fun and warm and pops, the vibe at the dance academy when Susie arrives is really cold and distant. Whereas in the remake, even though the color palette is very cold and distant, the vibe that Susie gets from the family of the dancers is very warm and inviting. It's a very familial setting. The most important difference is in the remake versus Argento's film is how Susie in the original feels the negativity and the destruction and the evil from Suspiriorum. Whereas Susie from the remake feels power from it and embraces the mother even though all the things that she does are horrible. The three mothers that I'm referring to are important to the story, and we'll get to those in a little bit. So let's jump into a couple of themes. The absolute craziest thing that Guadagnino's film managed to sneak into the themes of this remake is the Holocaust. Yeah, the Holocaust. In the remake, there is a psychologist by the name of Dr. Josef Klemperer, who through the movie mentions that his wife went missing when they were separated during the invasion, and despite pleas to move out of Germany long before it was too late, Dr. Josef did not think it was necessary. And to put it in context, this movie still does take place in 1977. The Holocaust was 30 years prior. So his wife has been missing for a considerably long time. We really see the themes of the Holocaust evolve through this movie, as the dancers perform a sequence called Volk, which is German for folk, or people. That was my southern coming out, I'm sorry. Hey y'all folk. So Volk is German for people, and many of the moves are very sharp and militant and include what could be interpreted as a lot of heiling. The ending of the remake is strikingly different to the original, in that it evolves into an art house meets horror, with one of the most visually chaotic but mesmerizing bloodbath sequences I've ever witnessed. Dr. Josef is witness to all the insanity and is forced to endure bodies dropping left and right as Mother Suspiriorum takes over. This seems symbolic of the Holocaust in some ways because of the quantity of the death, all the senseless destruction, all in the name of power. Another huge theme in the remake is that of mother-daughter relationships and how destructive they can be versus how wholesome they can be. Our protagonist, Susie, is just a small town gal from Ohio who was raised Mennonite, so therefore a little more sheltered than the rest. The apparent relationship between Susie and her mother in Ohio is that they are not close, and on her deathbed, her mother even admits that Susie is her biggest sin. This is a demonstration of a cold and distant mother-daughter relationship. Looking at the connection the coven of dance teachers have with Mother Marcos, the founder of the dance academy, it demonstrates codependency. Helena Marcos founded the school and started the coven that exists in the present time of the film. Marcos is the leader of the academy and, through a vote, remains as such, even though it is apparent that Madame Blanc wants to take over the position as head of the academy and coven. Madame Blanc does not seem to be Marcos' biggest supporter, as in an offhanded question, Blanc mentions that she thought the coven agreed to stop calling her by the name Mother Marcos. Ironically, the healthiest representation of a mother-daughter relationship is that between Madame Blanc and Susie. Madame Blanc takes Susie immediately under her wing in this version, and the two have an inseparable bond and understanding of one another. They're so close they can even speak telepathically, as we see in one scene. Madame Blanc cares for Susie so much that when it comes time for her to sacrifice her body to be what everyone believes to be a host for Mother Marcos, Blanc gets emotional and tells Susie that she can just pretend none of this happened and they can go back.
You must have no doubts, Susie. If you do, I can take you back. I can take all of this from your head. You can forget everything. I want this to be pure.
This shows a real love and motherly protection that Blanc has for Susie, something she never experienced with her own mother. Ironically, Mother Suspiriorum does not represent a mother-daughter relationship because, well, Susie is Mother Suspiriorum. Susie always had an unexplainable draw to Berlin since she was little, and the only explanation is that she is the reincarnation, the earthly body of Mother Suspiriorum, which makes sense as to why she's so chill about being a host for Suspiriorum and stating that this is what she came here for. In the original, Marcos and Suspiriorum are the same person, but in this version, they're two separate entities. And finally, let's delve into those three mamas. Argento got the idea of the three mothers from the writings of Thomas de Quincey, who wrote Suspiriorum de Profundis, which translate to Sighs from the Depths. Throughout literature, we see a repetitive rule of threes. This is a literary device that suggests things are more persuasive, humorous, or satisfying in threes. De Quincey keeps this rule of threes with his mothers and calls them Mother Suspiriorum, Mother Lacrimarum, and Mother Tenebrarum, or the Mother of Sighs, the Mother of Tears, and the Mother of Darkness. The trio are meant to represent different stages of sorrow, from its inception with Mater Tenebrarum beckoning sorrow, to Mater Suspiriorum representing the grieving stage, and Mater Tenebrarum wrapping it all up with a changed person and a darker side of an individual that comes after the grieving process. I really enjoyed watching both the movies. Now, me, being me, I watched the remake before I watched the original. And honestly, I think that's a good move. So if you haven't seen one of the two movies, definitely watch the remake first and then watch the original. I just can't imagine watching the original and setting up a certain expectation versus like watching the remake and then seeing how it contrasts to the original. Both are really interesting in their own ways. The remake is a little long for my liking. It's a little slow in the beginning. It is absolutely visually stunning. It keeps to the same camera tricks and cuts as you would in the 1970s. So it's really interesting in that regard. And I think there was a lot more depth to the mothers and to the background of the academy. The endings are completely different. And if anything, just watch the endings. Like, they're absolutely amazing. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun researching it. I love that film can teach us things all the time, no matter how young or old we are. It's really fun to go ahead and watch these things and find symbolism and do the research on it. So, all right. Thanks so much for watching.